Hi there. Welcome to another presentation of the Globe Sound Healing Conference. Now we have Stephanie Collins. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, David. How are you?
Great. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Stephanie is a holistic practitioner with a master's degree in ethnobotany and certifications in bodywork and health and wellness coaching. She is currently expanding her studies in herbal medicine and sound healing. Stephanie's path is deeply personal, shaped by a lifelong search for healing from generational and complex trauma. After being told at an early age that something was wrong, she found little relief in conventional diagnostic and treatment approaches. Her emotional and spiritual health were never considered. Stephanie's time living in Central and South America exposed her to non-Western perspectives on health, opening a new way forward, one that integrates original and modern wisdoms. Through the guidance of exceptional teachers and mentors, she has cultivated the knowledge and resources necessary to restore her own well-being and extend that support to others. Today, her work honors the body's innate resilience and the spirit's infinite potential, while highlighting the role of complementary practices now increasingly recognized as vital to medicine in supporting transformation, well-being, and inner peace. Excellent. What have you been up to lately?
Many things. Life's been changing quite a bit over the past couple of years, and I'm really not sure where I'm going, but opportunities arise, and when they feel like I need to take them, I do. And they always seem to take me down different paths. So I'm still in a process of learning what I'm doing. But big focus of mine, my whole life, but really in the past 7 years or so, has been on, we can call it holistic healing, but I think, more of a natural healing or, tapping into our own healing potential is something that, I've been able to study massage therapy. I really kind of started with that and herbal medicine. I've arrived to sound healing, which has been extremely transformational in the past couple of months since I've been taking the course. And, do energy work, and everything fascinates me. So I can't do everything, but I choose the ones that I feel really call to me.
Excellent. Okay, here's the big question. If you had all the money in the world, what would you do to help people?
Well, I've been interested in helping people my whole life, and I've tried different things. I joined the Peace Corps, thinking I was going to change the world. In my it was my late 20s. I was a little bit of a late arriver, and I was there 3 years. I was in Panama, and I lived with a community in for the lack of a better word, at the largest reservation in Panama with a tribe called the Nobe Bugle. And I went in there to work with agriculture and coffee, and I thought I was gonna, make a huge difference in the world. And ultimately, it came down to what changed was me. That community changed me, and being there and living in that environment and seeing the world through a different perspective really started putting me on a different path. And one of the things that really did change me was just the love and compassion of other people. From my perspective, they didn't have much of anything. I lived without electricity. There was not water all the time, not a lot of food, not a lot of work. But anywhere I went, I had food. I had people asking about me, and I had people calling me their family. So, that was a big experience in my life where I realized, changing the world isn't necessarily going out there and changing it. It's you're changing yourself and being open to connecting with other people and seeing things from different perspectives. And if I had all the money in the world, I would want to, I've gone through processes of trauma my whole life, and I never really got good answers. It wasn't until my mid 30s where I was like, I think something's not right. And, I still go through that. I'm still going through that healing process now. And I have a lot of quirkiness about me. I have, cognitive distortions and behavioral have patterns that I don't like. And like, seriously, every time I do something normal, I feel like giving myself a award. So, but the things that have been really helping me are like the sound healing's been helping me a lot. These traditional practices that everywhere I went, I lived in Peru for almost a decade, and went far and wide and made friends with as many people as I could with a big diversity, and always ended up sort of in groups that were interested in healing. And I really learned a different perspective on what that is and how important. It's not just the physical body, it's not just the emotional body. I mean, there's so many different aspects of that, and it fascinates me. And, learning, integrating what I learned there and what I continue to learn, and then what I'm learning now, I'm feeling better. I feel, a little bit more normal. Like I feel like I can go into spaces and breathe and communicate with people, and that feels amazing. And I have a mother who suffered trauma as well. It's part of the gift that was passed down generationally, and she never got the help she needed. And she had some really great parts of her life. She was an amazing person, but she ended it, and I, that breaks my heart that I didn't know better throughout my life, and that our medical system didn't know better ways to help her. And so, the long answer longer is that to change the world, I would want to help people with emotional and whole body healing. I can say spiritual, whatever that means to anybody, but making sure that it is a complete whole body, and that we have the resources ourselves to be able to have the courage and the belief in ourselves that we can recover from illness and disharmonies and disorders, and that there are people and practitioners out there that don't come to heal you, but that come to support you. And I really want to be one of those practitioners, and work with everybody. And I also want to focus on underserved communities, folks that arrive here to this country that need help and may not know where to turn. And honestly, anybody, anywhere in the world. And then education to me is really important, just to continue to learn and also to educate others.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so tell us about your presentation.
So my presentation, I'm a bit of a nerd. I really love anatomy and physiology. I was a massage therapist for quite a few years, and I was a teacher. I taught anatomy and physiology, and body just endlessly fascinates me. And when I started your course, David, I got the book, and I opened the book, and the first thing I saw was this, paragraph on the vagus nerve, and I read it, and I was like, whoa. It was really incredible. Like something clicked in my head about, I practiced acupressure and shiatsu, and we work with the meridians and the organs, and trying to explain that to students. Like they always ask, like, how do we work with the spleen? Just by putting compressions on the body or putting pressure on the body. And I would do my best to explain that. And, bringing the vagus nerve into my attention, and just knowing the connections through the ear, the articular branch that goes through the ear. And I'm not an acupuncturist, but I feel like acupuncture probably works through the vagus nerve as well to reach the organs. And the idea that sound, because all the organs, at least in traditional Chinese medicine, have sounds that are associated with them, amongst other things. So it just sort of like blew my mind open. I was like, wow, the sound healing thing's very interesting. And receiving sound and how deeply that can affect our bodies and reach, the deepest parts of ourselves, and not just the physical aspects, like the energetic and the metaphysical aspects of our body as well. So I got excited about it. I have known about the vagus nerve. I've studied it a little bit, but I didn't feel really confident in what that was. So I chose that as a topic because I wanted to learn. And, it was, I started going, and I was just like, oh my God, now I got to learn about this, and now I got to learn about this. And there's, way more that I need to learn about it than I know. But I hope what I share is helpful for others that might be starting out on a journey and understanding it and getting excited about anatomy and physiology, because it's so cool.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Let's check it out. And we'll talk on the other side.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're coming in from the world. My name is Stephanie, and I'm really honored to be here. I am a current student at the Globe Institute of Sound Healing and Therapy in Sausalito. I live close to Sausalito. I am in Marin County, and I'm excited to be here to share with you a topic that one of the things I'm very passionate about, which is the human body, anatomy and physiology. This is a presentation for my final paper that I did as part of the program at Globe. And it is about the vagus nerve. And I chose this topic because I am fascinated by the nervous system. I'm fascinated by the whole body, but the nervous system is something that is quite interesting to me. And the vagus nerve is a part of that system that has been for the past couple of years talked about in many different realms of healing arts. And as you can see, my paper is called The Vagus Nerve Function, Dysfunction, and the Frequency of Balance. So I'm going to start the presentation small, and I'm going to get big, and then I'm going to get a little bit small again. And that's going to be in terms of the anatomy of the vagus nerve and the physiology and what a healthy vagus nerve looks like. And then I'm going to talk about dysfunction and what that looks like. And then also how you might be able to understand to bring that nerve back into a state of balance by using frequencies, which promotes basically well-being overall in our bodies, health and well-being. If you look at the image that's behind the title here, this is an image of the vagus nerve. It's not complete. It's more of the larger structures of the nerve. There are quite a few more, and I do have some more images throughout the presentation, but I liked this one because it reminds me of headphones. And as we're going to learn, the vagus nerve is a form of communication. It's a way that our brain can communicate with our body, and our body communicates with our brain. So I thought this was a pretty interesting photograph. I saw a photograph, pretty interesting image. So our nervous system, the nervous system is our communication highway. It's constructed of nerve cells, which are called neurons, that form the cable-like fiber structures called nerves. Nerves connect us to everything in our internal and external environments. Our nervous system is the control center of the body, and it coordinates all functions. So we can see here, there's an image of the nervous system. You know, we can see parts, the brain, the spinal cord, and then all the green there are the nerves that come off of those central structures. And they're not green, but they just are in this picture. And you can see, we can make out images here of, you know, where our ribs would be, where our pelvis, our legs, our thighs, our hands, our feet, because the nerves are everywhere in our body. And if we took away everything, we would still be able to see an image of a body because there's that many nerves in our system. So the structures, the nerves themselves are made up of cells like everything is. We may, or you may, you know, think of a cell as a round structure with a nucleus in the middle. That's pretty common that we get that in our biology class. However, cells are different shapes, and the nerve cells look like this. So we can see here, just to navigate this a little bit, there are some similarities. There's a nucleus here in the center, surrounded by the soma, which is, soma means body. And then coming off of the soma are these dendrites. Following down this corridor here, it's not really a corridor, but following down the nerve is called an axon. And the axon is covered in what we call myelin, or this myelin sheath. So the reason that the myelin is there is basically it's made up of fat, and the fat is produced by the Schwann cells, and it's there for insulation. So you can think of an electrical cord that has a covering around it, so that's to help insulate and protect. But it's also there to increase the frequency of communication, so it increases the body's ability to communicate a lot quicker. And you may or may not know this, but all fat in our body, also is part of our communication system. So information is passed through our fat cells. So it is important in many ways. Um, the nodes of Ranvier are basically just spaces between the myelin, and they have that name because it was a French biologist that they're named after. And as we follow down to the end, we see these axon terminals. And at the very end, these little nodes, which are called synapses. And the synapses pass information from nerve cell to nerve cell. So, if we would see this in a chain, the dendrites would be not connected to, but very close to the axon terminal and these synapses, and the electrical currents or the chemical signals would pass along, picked up by the dendrites. They would make their journey down through the axon, sped up by the myelin, and then sent to the synapses here at the end and passed on to the next dendrite. So it's a chain of communication that happens. When the signal is strong enough or the impulse is strong enough, then the chain of communication continues. And then eventually there is a reaction. And often the reaction happens before we even have time to think about it. So you touch a hot stove and you immediately remove your hand before you even really know what you're doing. So the neurons and the nerve cells, they work by electrical and chemical signals, like I said, called impulses. They are passed from neuron to neuron. Impulses are generated and transmitted at different rates, creating action potential. When the impulses are strong enough, information is carried from the brain and the body by the chain of interconnected neurons. So those neurons create our nervous system. And then our nervous system, we have different divisions. We divided the nervous system into two different sections. It is just one system. But to help us understand how it functions, we do divide things and classify them. So we have two main branches that we're going to talk about first, which is called the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And I'm just going to backtrack here for a second. So our central nervous system is made up of our brain, which is here, and also the spinal cord. So that's the central nervous system. Our peripheral nervous system is everything else. So everything else that it hangs off the brain and the spinal cord. So central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system is the drawing in green. And that is also divided into two categories. So we have an autonomic nervous system and a somatic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is in charge of involuntary actions, so things that we don't have control over. So an example of that could be our heartbeat. We don't have to think about our heart beating, thank goodness, because if we did, that's all we would ever do. It is also in control of our things like digestion, peristalsis. So it's just the normal everyday functioning of our body that we do not have to sit down and say, I am now digesting my food. I am now eliminating my food. I am now beating my heart. Whereas the somatic nervous system is voluntary. And the voluntary part of our nervous system allows us to do things that we want to. So an example of that is I can sit here and I can say, I really want to touch my camera. Really want to touch that camera. And then I can do it. So that's the voluntary part. The autonomic nervous system, the involuntary, again, is broken down into a couple of subcategories. So we have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest. We also have the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And then sort of a new addition to the autonomic nervous system is the enteric nervous system, or our gut brain. And that is the nerves that go through our gut. And interestingly enough, the enteric brain is not connected directly to the spinal cord. It is connected to the spinal cord and the brain through the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, which is really important. So The parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest. Um, we're going to look at this in a minute, but just to kind of because it's there, there's is made up of some of the cranial nerves. So cranial nerves 3, 7, 9, and 10. And it's also made up of the sacral nerves. I have 2 to 4 here. I've also heard 1 to 5, which is not really what we're going to be talking about today, but I do want you to know that some of the sacral nerves are also part of the parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system comes out of the spinal cord in a system called ganglions, just basically like bundles of nerves. And then the enteric, there are, like I said, is connected through the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So where does the vagus nerve fall in this picture? It's part of the parasympathetic nervous system. So the vagus nerve is part of our rest and digest. And the vagus nerve is entitled cranial nerve number 10. So here, I think these are some pretty interesting pictures. And I first saw something like this on the wall of my chiropractor, and I looked at it and it kind of just blew my mind. Because I am a body worker and I've done some like shiatsu and acupressure and talking about, how to, the different organs of the bodies and how you can reach them. And I saw this and I was like, whoa. Uh, so here is the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And like I was explaining in the previous slide, the sympathetic nervous system branches out from the spinal cord. So this is the spinal cord here. And you can see all the connections that this has. And then, each of these ganglion that come out connect to an organ or some part of the body, right? Eyes or mouth, throat, lungs, heart. Sympathetic is the fight and flight. Then we have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is part of the rest and digest. And here are the sacral nerves that I was talking about, which are not part of the vagus nerve. And if you can remember the number of the cranial nerve, which is 10, we can see that here. So it stems off of the brain stem, actually. It doesn't necessarily come out of the brain, but it does come off of the brain stem. And it's this huge long nerve that comes out here just below the brain and branches out to many of the organs in the body. So we need to have both our sympathetic and our parasympathetic nervous systems working in good balance with each other. So that's why I have this little stack of rocks in the middle. It's not so much like a balance where there's imperfect balance all the time, but it's more of a balance where we need one to take over a little bit more. We eat a burrito and we really need to be in our parasympathetic system because digestion happens in the rest and digest, right? So after a large meal, we don't want to be in a state of hyperarousal or in fight or flight because when that happens, the energy goes into, our muscles, increasing our heart rate and hypervigilance and waiting to take action. Where when we're in rest and digest, we don't have that. We don't have that stimulus, and then all the energy can go into our gut. So we eat something and our belly says, okay, it's time to take this and process it. On the other hand, if we're hiking through the woods and we come across a mountain lion, we don't want our body to be like, well, that's cool, but I'm going to just digest this burrito. We want it to take action and be on alert and do whatever is necessary. Actually, don't ever run from a mountain lion. But we want to be in a space where we're paying attention and that we can get our self to a state of safety. And then, then our body can worry about that burrito. So love these photos and gives, kind of an idea about where these nerves are coming off of and how they work together in balance. Here's another image of the vagus nerve. And the brain's not included in that. It just happens to be in this image, but I do like it. And here you can see a little bit more of the intricacies of the nerves branching out and, how full this nerve truly is. We might think of nerves as like very delicate things, which they are, but they can also be quite thick and quite extensive. So it's not just like one little string of nerve, it's quite the network. So the vagus nerve is named, it's a Latin name, and which means the wanderer. And looking here, we can get the idea of why it is called that. It comes from the brain stem or part of the brain called the medulla oblongata. It goes through the facial muscles. It also travels through the ears, our tongue, the larynx, our vocal cords, heart, lungs, our esophagus, our stomach, and then other abdominal organs, lower abdominal organs. And then I have beyond here in question marks because, it gets thinner and thinner, more delicate the further it goes out into the body. Once it gets down into the lower abdomen, we kind of lose track of it. You would need to see it through a microscope and able to be able to follow it. So, it's uncertain how far the vagus nerve reaches, but for the purposes of what we're talking about today, we can say, it goes down into the abdomen. Some additional information about the vagus nerve is that it is one of the 43 peripheral nerves, cranial nerve 10. It's the longest cranial nerve. So we saw that in this previous picture. Here are some of the other cranial nerves here, and look how long the vagus nerve is in comparison. We may have heard the terminology dorsal and ventral vagal, and just to get a little bit better understanding, this is very brief understanding, but the ventral vagal is basically the nerve above the diaphragm. The dorsal vagal is the nerve below the diaphragm. As we already learned, it's part of the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest. And it is multidirectional. Not all nerves are multidirectional, but the vagus nerve is. And what that means, it has efferent and efferent motorways. So the efferent is basically motor, and that is connected from the brain to the body. And then the afferent is the sensory fiber, so it's the body to the brain. So it sends signals back and forth. So we're able to receive messages from our body, and we're able to give messages to our body from our brain. It regulates essential involuntary functions, and it plays an essential role in maintaining homeostasis in our body. So vagus nerve function, when it's functioning well, we call it high vagal tone. We say it has high vagal tone. This is when neuron signaling is strong in the parasympathetic nervous system, optimizing involuntary functions of the rest and digest. So this is kind of an interesting vocabulary. The rest and digest is, we consider that kind of an inactive or, restful way. But in order for us to be in that state, we need to have a high vagal tone, and we need to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. It helps keep us physically, mentally, emotionally, and socially balanced. So some of the things that we can see, in people and our clients and in ourselves, when we have healthy vagal tone, we have good speech and communication. We have a healthy immune function and inflammatory response. We're able to rest, relax, and regulate. It enhances social and emotional regulation, increases heart rate variability. Our learning capacity increases. It lowers resting heart rate, helps us to recover from stress quicker, and we have good digestive and gut health, or good digestive function and gut health. So these are all, things that we need to have to be able to, function on a day-to-day basis. And then vagus nerve dysfunction. So on the other side of that, when the vagus nerve is not in its optimal state of health, we call that, we'll refer to that as low vagal tone. So when the vagus nerve is not activated, the tone is low. And this is associated with reduced parasympathetic activity, or also a dysfunctional vagus nerve. It disrupts physical, mental, and emotional social balance. So some of the things that we might see that suggests that someone or we have low vagal tone. So decreased social connection, emotional dysregulation, difficulty relaxing, fatigue or low energy, low heart rate variability, increased stress. Our learning capacity goes down, our resting heart rate goes up. Digestive issues can arise and, possibly have mental health challenges. And, these, it's kind of is it a chicken or the egg situation here because, the causes of having low vagal tone, stress can cause low vagal tone, but low vagal tone can also cause stress. So it kind of turns into, or it can turn into a vicious cycle if not interrupted or, put into, shouldn't say put into, but help to return to a healthy state of balance. So some causes here, and this is still being studied. We don't know everything about the human body. I don't know if we ever will, but it's certainly fun to try. So physical injuries, things like head trauma or whiplash, that myelinated sheath or the myelin sheath that we looked at down the axon of the neuron that's made of fat, if that's damaged, that can reduce communication along the vagus nerve. Things like multiple sclerosis might arise or show up as a complication. Surgical procedures, chronic inflammation, stress, and I've put here both real and imagined because worry is a form of stress. We worry about things that haven't happened yet, but it has a very real impact on our physiology. Emotional trauma, things like PTSD, diabetes, especially in the neuropathy area, and infections like Lyme disease or Epstein-Barr virus. So, and much more, there are many things that can cause the vagus nerve to go into dysfunction. So, like I said, we need to have this balance. Sometimes we need to have a less activated parasympathetic nervous system. We need the vagal tone to, chill out because we need to be in sympathetic. However, when it becomes chronic, then there are more serious conditions that can arise. And I put, there's a wide range of symptoms, conditions, or diseases and I put a star there because if this shows up in you or somebody or your client, have them seek the proper appropriate medical attention that they may need for these conditions. But you can certainly, be a complementary service to them to be able to, and so useful, as we'll see in just a little bit. But some of these things might be cardiovascular disease. Somebody comes to you with any of these things and they're under the care of a trained physician or medical practitioner, then we're good. But if they come to you and they say, well, I have these things, but I'm not getting treated, then they need to make sure that they get treated. So cardiovascular disease, chronic pain syndromes, diabetes, anxiety, migraines, digestive disorders, acid reflux, sleep disorders, brain fog, difficulty breathing, hoarseness, tinnitus, depression, autoimmune disease, and these are just some examples of what chronic low vagal tone can look like or turn into or show up as. So, what can we do about this? There's something out there called vagal nerve stimulation that is, being researched and practiced. It's not necessarily a new practice, but it is, a new term. And it's activating the relaxation response. And I've heard it deemed as the potential off switch for disease, which I find fascinating. And we can say these big things, but they have these titles for a reason, and there's a lot that we can do to be able to help support folks that need the attention so that they can get healthy again. Vagal nerve stimulation is a treatment or a practice that alters the activity of the nerves. So it influences the release of neurotransmitters, such as norepinephrine or serotonin. It calms the abdominal oh, excuse me, the abnormal electrical activity, increases blood flow in the brain, stimulates helpful hormone and enzyme production, increases neuroplasticity, and modulates the entire autonomic nervous system. So not just the parasympathetic, but also the sympathetic. And then this image here, again, is just sort of fun to see some anatomy, at least I think so. And this yellow structure here that goes down the neck is the vagus nerve. So you can kind of see where that lies, along our cervical spine and down through the neck. There would be more nerves connecting it to different regions of the body, but this is just a basic image. But I also find it very helpful. So clinical practices. I'm going to just mention these because they are out there, and I think it's good to be aware. There's many, many. So I've just chosen three. So the first one here is an implantable battery-operated device, or there are devices, and it's referred to as a pacemaker for the brain. And this is this image here, the blue person. So there's a little device that's implanted in the chest, and there's a wire that goes up and literally wraps around the vagus nerve. There are some pretty interesting photos of this. I've noted the website here, epilepsysociety.org.uk. They do have some more graphic pictures of that, and I appreciate them because I just, to see the intensity of what that is. It is an invasive procedure, but I didn't want to put them up here because I didn't want to surprise anybody with something they might not want to see. So it's a pulse generator that sends signals via this wire around the vagus nerve. It's controlled by a remote, and the frequency is 20 to 30 hertz. And through the literature, it seems like between 20 and 30 is what has been deemed the frequency of the vagus nerve. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but here it is. And it's been approved, mostly used to not cure seizures from epilepsy, but it helps to reduce their frequency and their severity, and it seems to be quite effective in doing that. And also Parkinson's, it helps to reduce tremors. It's being looked at to help the recovery of folks that have had strokes, and then it has shown some very promising results in treating chronic depression that is resistant to how normally that would be treated through medications or through talk therapy. With it being an implant, there are some risks, just common side effects of surgery, infection, or damaging structures. But it does seem to be able to help folks that have some pretty serious conditions. Another approach is the focused ultrasound, which is a non-invasive, and that is a pretty basic procedure. You can do it as an outpatient, and it is something that is done in the auricular branch of the vagus nerve. It's in the ear. So the vagus nerve runs into the ear. And I've highlighted here in red the area that they use the ultrasound for. So they send these frequencies, again, here it seems a little bit smaller, to the 30 hertz through the ear in order to stimulate vagal tone. So to increase vagal tone. It uses sound waves, and they use MRI to be able to target areas like in the stomach, specific nerves. So you can do it through abdominal cavity as well, with the ultrasound. But I think one of the more common ones is here through the ear. It is used for a wider range of things. So anxiety helps to reduce inflammation in the body. So things like rheumatoid arthritis or heart disease. It's been proven to be helpful with addictions, PTSD, bipolar disorder, chronic pain, and many other things. It's also being looked at for Parkinson's and epilepsy, traumatic brain injury. You can find out more information. There's a foundation called Focused Ultrasound Foundation. It's not just about the vagus nerve, but they do offer the so many different ways that they're using this now to treat different imbalances in the body. And fascinating to see that you have information there about the nervous system as well. The risks are still under investigation, but they seem pretty low. And then we have this last external electrode device. This is something that, you can just buy off the internet. There are instructions. You probably have medical advice to follow or instruction to use this, but it's a little handheld and it's put against the vagus nerve in the neck. Like we saw in this picture, it's very accessible there. And also set at 20 to 30 hertz. And this one's called the Truvaga, but there are multiple devices like this that are available for purchase. Activates the parasympathetic nervous system. This device is targeted for the vagus nerve. It affects levels of neurotransmitters in the brain like serotonin. And, it's what it does for the body. I think, it's probably in those stages where research is not at a point where it's satisfactory to be able to say it proves that it does this, but they do say it improves overall well-being, increases heart rate variability, improves mood and focus, enhances memory, improves, cognitive performance. And then again, the risks for this, I'm sure that you can, overuse it or underuse it, but the risks seem pretty low, but they are also still under investigation. Then, so this is really kind of where we as sound therapists or student sound therapists, or whatever your profession may be, can have a better idea of how we can influence the vagus nerve and people's well-being by working with different types of sound and frequency. So vagal toning and sound therapy, a lot of the protocols that have been designed already or approaches, again, this is something that's new, but it's also not new. It's just categorized in this way, so it seems new. But many traditional, practices for thousands of years have included music. They probably haven't called it vagal toning, but it has similar effects. So, we're just giving new names to things that have already, been in practice for a very long time. But there's also some new ideas that are out there. And these can include recorded sound vibrations that are played via headphones. Vocalizations can be made by the individual. So if I can tone my own vagal nerve, or live sound is used to stimulate the nerve endings located in the ear, the throat, and the chest. Vibrations are carried along the vagus nerve to the brain and the various organs that it connects to. So one of these is called filtered music therapy. Specific frequencies are accentuated in recorded music that stimulate the vagus nerve out of hyperarousal or shutdown and into a more regulated, grounded state. Headphones are used to administer the sound, and frequencies found in human speech are often the focus, and even an individual's own voice can be incorporated into the recordings. The recordings are tailored to the individual's own needs and can be used either at home or in a clinical practice. A few examples of the filter music therapy. One is the Safe and Sound protocol, which is designed by Stephen Porges. So he's the polyvagal guy. And it's about a 5-hour program. If you want to learn more about it, you can, Google that, Google, I think there's a Safe and Sound Protocol website, actually. It's about a 5-hour program divided into 20 to 40 sessions, depending on the need of the individual, and is often combined with breath work, movement, and polyvagal exercises. Another form of filter music therapy is the voice analysis harmony. I'm not sure if it's, officially classified as filter music therapy, but from, what I've experienced from it, it feels like it goes into this category. It was created by Kai Thompson Leo, a neuropath. She's a neuropath and a health researcher in the 1990s. And these programs, 20 minutes plus program, and basically your voice gets analyzed by a program, a computer program, and it can read the tones or the frequencies, the notes that are too high or too low. And those missing frequencies can be put into a special recording that is played for the individual. They can put the headphones on and they can play. It is often combined with toning the missing notes. So, if it's me, I went in to have this done. I knew the notes that I was deficient in, have the recording that I listened to on a recording, but then I also tone so my own body is resonating that note from within. I also got the opportunity to lie on the sound bed with that. So basically, my whole system was surrounded by these sounds. Um, but the beds, you don't necessarily need them, but I think that they're a lovely addition to these therapies. Another form of vagal toning is vibroacoustic therapy, which uses low frequency sound waves and soothing vibrations to encourage deep relaxation. It relieves stress, eases pain, and supports overall well-being. Frequencies are deep reaching and affect all 12 body systems, not just localized regions. So, with some of these devices here, the vagal nerve goes through a lot, very deeply into the body, but, the vibration is going in, at a very targeted area where vibroacoustic therapy or even the filtered music therapy, it's being able to be accompanied by these other practices, it resonates through the whole body. It stimulates the body's natural healing responses and restoring energetic flow. The practice promotes balance within the nervous system and helps to regulate the body's natural functioning. Some of the things that are used are vibrating mats, tables, lounges, pillows, vests, and again, often accompanied by headphones that transmit tailored sounds or music. And the frequencies here are about 30 to 120 hertz. This is where we kind of, can see the more ancient or traditional practices that haven't necessarily been called toning the vagal nerve, but vagus nerve, but humming, singing, gargling, and chanting are also ways that we can do this. And basically, the vocalizations directly affect the vagus nerve as it connects to the vocal cords. So we see in these pictures that the vagus nerve goes through our throat, it connects to our vocal cords, and is believed to stimulate the auricular branch of the vagus nerve in the ear. These, we see these things as part of spiritual practices, and they're there for good reasons. We can do them for ourselves, we can do them for others, and we can offer this to our clients as homework. So, someone comes in and receives our services, and then in between sessions, we can say hum to yourself, sing to yourself. I mean, I don't know how fun gargling is, but why not? Or chanting. And these practices alone, you can't help but include breath, movement, sound, vibration. You don't need any equipment, and they can really be done anywhere. So don't underestimate them and take full advantage. Musical instruments as well. Musical instruments, a single instrument or multiple in bursts or in unison. The options are pretty endless. Just listening to the musical instrument, so any consistent, stable vibration can induce relaxation. Placing an instrument on the chest or the abdomen, so something like a singing bowl, a tuning fork, or a drum, not only delivers the sound to the body and the vibration to the body, the nervous system, but it can help relax the diaphragm. And this is where the vagus nerve passes, right? So, we see it pass through the diaphragm into the lower abdominal cavity through the esophageal hiatus, which is a hole inside the diaphragm. Diaphragm's a muscle, and like any muscle, it can get tight. And, in daily life, we feel stress, we hold tension, and that diaphragm can get super tight. So, in order to facilitate better functioning of the vagus nerve, one of the things that's really important is to relax the diaphragm. Um, if you play an instrument, especially a wind instrument such as a flute or a didgeridoo or harmonica, it offers the benefit of both the giver and the receiver. So, you need to use your diaphragm and get breath into your body and movement to be able to play these instruments. And then, just listening to them can help induce a state of relaxation. And then spending time in nature. All of nature has its own frequency, and the more our systems are exposed to the natural sounds, the more we become entrained by them. Recordings of nature are also very effective. We can play recordings for ourselves, for our clients. It's so effective that in Japan, forest bathing, Shinrin Yoku, and I apologize if I don't say that right, is prescribed to reduce stress and anxiety. So it is really important. Ultimately, we are nature. So go home. How you feel when you're in your home. You feel safe, you feel supported, hopefully, and even if, maybe going out for a weekend camping isn't your cup of tea, being in a garden or walking through a park or, having plants in your home or animals, like all these things help, us to connect to the natural world and ultimately to ourselves. So just as a kind of a review, let's remember where the vagus nerve goes. So, all these areas where the vagus nerve travels, we have this immense potential to reach our body and have our body reach us. And by engaging in these practices, whether we're offering them or receiving them, we have a tremendous power to help our body stay in good health and well-being. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity for us to become more embodied and to listen to our body better. Because, the vagus nerve is the headphone that helps us hear what our body needs, and things become out of balance. The voice is pretty quiet. And if we can learn to hear the quietness of that, hear the body speak through softness, and not wait till it has to yell, then we can take action long before we need, bigger tools to be able to help us come back to a state of well-being. So just in conclusion, experiment with several of these approaches. Try it with yourself, try it with your clients. Always get professional support when appropriate, and listen to how the body responds. That's super essential for customizing treatments and practices that fit both the person and the condition, right? And basically, we're really not treating conditions here. We're treating people. We're helping people that have conditions. So even when a disease or dysfunction are not present, consistent vagal toning helps to maintain physical, mental, emotional, and social balance, which are fundamental to overall health and well-being. And I think we are very good about going for our checkups and our yearly checkups with body and everything. And I can relate this to, you can go to a practitioner once a month or once every other month or however you want to go, but it's the times in between that are also important. So you can go to a dentist twice a year for a cleaning, but if you don't brush your teeth every day, you're not going to have good dental hygiene. So being able to understand that ourselves and talk to our clients and listen to ourselves and be able to do these things on a daily basis, sing, hum, chant, listen to music, do the things that are supportive, spend time in nature, because they really are essential to being able to live in a peaceful, balanced way. And then lastly, oh, well, here's some we're excited. So there's so many amazing people that do research and work with the nervous system, the body. And if you're interested, I really encourage you to check any of these folks out. They're incredible, and I've learned so much from them, and there's so many more. And before I end, I just wanted to be able to invite people into a short practice of vagal toning. And I've chosen this picture. This is where I live in Marin. It's a picture I took one morning of Mount Tamalpais, which is the very important part of our landscape here. And this was a beautiful morning as the mist was rising. So this little practice is something that I put together. I have, through two teachers that I study with. So one of them is Sat Guru, and then another one is Marianne Azoff. And just being able to use the chant to be able to tone our vagal nerve. And I want to invite you to maybe think about this in a different way. So in chanting or there are three sounds that are made. And these three sounds are the only sounds that we can make without actually having to move our tongue. So in order to make them where we can fill up our bodies and really get movement all the way down into our abdomen, we need to take nice deep breaths. So, get comfortable if you can, if you're in a space to feel a little comfortable, if you can do this. Um, start connecting into your breath, and I'll do it first, and then I'll give you some space to do it on your own. And when we make the sound the ah part of that is going to go down into our lower abdomen. So we think of like the smaller regions of the vagus nerve, and we're doing this really, really focus on your vagus nerve. So we're going to make the journey from our abdomen all the way up into our brainstem. So the aum is going to be down in the lower abdomen. The au is going to be in the chest, and the is going to be up here in the throat, into the back of the neck. So when we go aum, we're going to bring that sound from down up and then resonate into our necks. And when you do that, try not to move your tongue. So one way that might be helpful is open your mouth and then you take your tongue and just rest the tip of your tongue on the back of your teeth. And that'll help you from, feeling the need to move your tongue and just help it keep relaxed. And when you make the sound, you actually don't have to make the sound. You just make a sound, and as you close your mouth, the aum begins to form. So an example of that is and don't worry, you don't have to sound pretty. If your voice cracks or is shaky, that's perfect. And it might give you some information, but just accept whatever comes out, and try to not think about, the quality of what's coming out. Just feel it. So I'm going to invite us to do this 3 times, and I'm going to give you a little space to complete this on your own. I'll mute myself, um, and then I will gently call you back. And I'll just give you a little bit of a closure before ending the presentation. So I want you to try to remain in the state. And I'll give you just a few moments here. I'm going to mute myself. I'm gonna invite you just to keep following your breath and try to connect with the space that you just created with the sound and the vibration. Stay connected to your vagus nerve and sense if there's any change in your body. And while you're doing that, try to gain the image of your vagus nerve. Think of it as a root. Think of it as a tap root of a plant that goes down deep within us, that allows us to draw whatever it is we need, information, sensation from within us and from without us, and allows us to engage in the world that we live in, to engage with ourselves, to engage with each other. And know that this root needs to be healthy in order for the plant to thrive, right? So, our vagus nerve needs to be healthy and happy in order for us to thrive. And what it needs is attention. It needs to be looked after, it needs to be cared for, it needs awareness. And hopefully today you've discovered or learned some more skills to be able to do that, or inspired to create your own practices and share them, either do them for yourself or do them for yourself and share them with others. But always know that you have this taproot that you can come back into at any time and realize it keeps you rooted in life, it keeps you grounded, and it keeps you able to enjoy this wonderful place that we live. So thank you all so much for your time and attention today. I really enjoyed sharing this information with you. I hope you've enjoyed receiving it, and I look forward to the next time that we meet. Be well, everyone. Thank you.
Your research and detail is just so excellent. So excellent. I just really appreciate it because everybody's talking about the vagus nerve and sound healing, and it's really really didn't know the details of it. The first thing is whenever I see the complexity of the body, and we're just talking the nervous system only here, it's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. I mean, not even to mention how it ties into emotions and mental body and spiritual body or your soul. I mean, just looking at the physical detail of all those different components within the nervous system, it just blows my mind. Who the hell put this together?
Yeah. I mean, I feel the same way. I feel sad that, some people are shy away from anatomy and physiology and may see it more as, science or too sciencey for more spiritual approaches. But honestly, it's the same thing. It's just a different lens. And it's helpful, I feel, to be able to perceive in many, many different ways. And the more that we dive into the human body, I think the closer we get to our own souls. And, we don't have to be a scientist to be able to do that. But, I think having fun with it and really being embodied and getting to know your own body is just healing in itself.
Right, right. Cool. Okay. So there's one thing that I was a little not completely clear about. It seems like there's the nervous system. What are the two main nervous systems?
The central and the peripheral?
Uh-huh. Yeah, central and peripheral. So then within the peripheral, there's the three different areas, right?
Yes.
And so it sounds like it wasn't perfectly here, but it sounds like the vagus nerve is mostly within the parasympathetic of those three.
Yes.
Is it? Okay, cool.
Yes.
But it's interesting because it seems like the the central nervous system has nerves that itself that go to the organs,
It
right?
does.
Right? So
Yeah.
there's like two pathways of electricity going to the organs, one through the central nervous system, the spinal cord mostly, and then also split off. because it's really interesting to look at the vagus nerve as it's its own system on its own. It's not like going down the spine like the rest of the nerve. It's actually a completely separate system. So the organs are getting two messages.
Yes, so it is not necessarily the spinal cord. It's the sympathetic nervous system that branches off from the spinal cord. So when you look at those
Oh,
diagrams, the parasympathetic, which is the vagus nerve is part of that, comes down from the brainstem, the cranial nerve 10, and it's the longest of the
oh.
cranial nerves, where the sympathetic or the fight or flight it's like the spinal cord comes down the spinal column.
I got it. So it is
Yeah,
all actually from the spinal cord, no matter what.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, I got it.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so it is just really one system. Okay, I got it. Okay, cool. So, uh, so one thing I want to mention when we are talking about the voice analysis harmony, I now own that. Uh, okay, so well, I got really interested, and I've always wondered, no one's ever really pinned it down as to what the frequency of the nerve is. And you got way more information than anybody I've ever talked to, and it's so cool. So, like the one company with the battery implant device, they implant the battery, they're using 20 to 30 hertz. And then the auricular branch is using 2 to 30 hertz. And then the True Vega is using 20 to 30 also. And I'm like, how'd they figure that out? I mean, how'd they come up with that?
That is a really good question. I don't know how they came up with that. I do remember reading that lower frequencies tend to be more effective. So it could be that they've tried different frequencies and found like the lower ones to be able to put you into a state of relaxation better than something a little bit higher.
Right. Well, this is what's interesting because the main frequency of the nervous system are the brainwave states. So we're talking actual, mostly rhythms below 20 hertz. So the delta, I mean, if you're in delta, your brain is pulsing at zero point 0.5 to 3 cycles per second, which is like really slow. And that pulses through the whole nervous system. And then if you're kind of doing the theta, it's a little faster, and then it's doubled. And then alpha is doubled that, and then beta is like, brrr, and then when you get to gamma, you finally enter the range of sound, which is at 20 hertz. So they're
Okay.
actually putting gamma frequencies into the nervous system, which makes sense. That kind of makes sense. But here's what I'm thinking is I bet everybody's different.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing we're doing in Jeffrey Thompson's research is tune the rhythms to where your brain and nervous system would naturally be. So I would think that your vagus nerve is simply pulsing at your metabolism rate, which is the one of the brain waves. It depends where you are in the day as to how doubled or half that frequency is.
Yeah, I would really agree with that. In terms of anatomy, we see these charts of our bodies and where things are located and what they look like, but they're generalizations. And one of the gentlemen I follow is Gil Headley. He's an anatomist and he does dissections of cadavers. And he's pointed out, he's done, I don't know how many he's done, but he's like, you can think that something's going to show up where we think it's going to be. And he's like, and then you open somebody up and it's totally somewhere else. Or if it's a different shape, or they have two of them, or so, people's anatomy, it does vary. I mean, you can look general areas. I can't remember one of the examples, something about maybe the liver being like way up in the rib cage, but yeah, so our anatomy does actually differ from person to person, and then everything that makes up our energy fields varies too. We're all individuals.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people's metabolism is much slower, some it's much faster. Yeah. Excellent. But there's another variable here that's really interesting. And you mentioned it briefly, and that's that the electrical signals and impulses are at different rates for different cells or different nervous system parts. different nervous system parts.
Yeah, so the action potential, when a signal is generated, it has different forces. And if it's not strong enough, it doesn't create does not pass along the signal. So I don't know what the strength of the rate that needs to be able to pass down the neuron. And in the neurons have these little encasings that are made out of fat. Some of them have them and some of them don't. And the ones that have them pass information a lot quicker. So it's like
Uh-huh.
very rapid.
Wow, that's really interesting because if I'm thinking, okay, if you really want to tune the nervous system, first you find your rhythm, and then you find the variations for the different systems that you're just talking about, whether it's got the myelin or not, right? And because I've heard often before that the speed at which electricity flows through the nervous system varies. It's different on different organs and different parts of the nervous system. So, oh my God, I'm like, okay, we can figure out the actual frequency of those speeds for every nerve part of the nervous system and play it to that part of the nervous system to get you back to exactly the flow that you need.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I will sign up for that.
Excellent, excellent. Um, so I guess the last thing here is Alice Bailey talks about that the spirit is directly connected to the blood and that the nervous system is consciousness. And so it's really interesting when I first read that, I was like, "Oh my God, I've never thought about where's that life force and consciousness, where's it sinking to our physical body?" And that's like so cosmic, so important, it seems like. And
Yeah.
so it was really interesting that she said the nervous system is where our consciousness, uh, which could be higher consciousness or oneness or maybe even higher beings. Who knows? Right? Any thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that in class a few times, and it's gotten my attention, especially the blood, the spirit being in the blood. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the spirit is called Shen, I believe with a capital S. And they say Shen is rooted in the blood, or is it Qi? Qi is rooted in the blood, and then the blood is the mother of Qi. And
Mm,
she's sort of like that life force, or the spirit that runs through us.
mm,
And then the nervous system, yeah, like that part of consciousness, that would make sense to me because that's where, we sense everything in our environment and we sense it through other things too, but it's really in everything that I've studied, and I definitely haven't exhausted the resources in the world, but the thing that I hear over and over and over again, it's all about the nervous system, in terms of health and balance and well-being. And thinking about, because I studied ethnobotany and I lived a lot in Central and South America, and I studied archaeology for a while, and I'm really interested in some of the traditional cultures. And one of the biggest offerings that they would give to the energies and the entities that are out there, I can't say gods, or because I don't believe that's the terminology that was traditionally used, but they gave their blood, and that
mm.
was considered the greatest gift that they could give. So, those things, you hear those things, and they're all expressed in different ways. But I would agree with her on that.
It's interesting because, I was just noticing that when I think of the nervous system, I think of it in the body, but really it's perfectly synchronously connected to everything around us. I
Yeah.
mean, there is no, it doesn't really stop here. I mean, not only is everything around us affecting the nervous system as it comes in, even cosmic rays from other galaxies, for that matter, not to mention all the scattered people or loving people, right, around us, right? But also our nervous system puts out electromagnetic signals that affect everybody else as well. So it's really a system that's completely tied into the whole universe.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I've heard, like the mycelium of mushrooms. I've heard people, mycologists, talking about the intricate network and how the mycelium, talk to each other, but also pass communication to other, like the plants that are growing. They live on the roots of plants. And the communication travels through the mycelium of the mushrooms, and it passes messages to other beings. So, and if you look at roots, if you look at mycelium, if you look at our nervous system, it's the same structure. It's very similar. And although, we have to have distinctions, otherwise we'd just be, I don't know what we'd be, like this
Yeah, we
giant,
could.
giant one being.
Right. No more talking about
Yeah.
it.
But yeah, I totally agree. Like our nervous systems are just this incredible web that connects everything on this planet. And, it's like a spider web. The spider moves because it feels something touch its web, at the other side of the web, and it picks up and then knows something's there. It's the same. Our nervous system puts out this grand feeler, and we pick up on everything, I think, if we're quiet enough.
Well, excellent. Thanks so much for your presentation. It was just really well put together, and thanks for everything you do.
Oh, well, thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to do this and for having this school. It's really changed my life.
Thank you. Okay. See ya. Hi there. Welcome to another presentation of the Globe Sound Healing Conference. Now we have Jayson Stilwell. Hi, Jayson.
Hi, David. How are you?
Good. Uh, Jayson has been an overtone singer, drummer, and percussionist, sound healer, teacher, performer, and recording artist for 30 years. He's based in the UK and has shared his work internationally and on mainstream TV and radio many times. The main focus of Jayson's work in sound healing is to facilitate the alchemical self-healing power of our voices, exactly as they are. Jayson looks to empower others to find the innate power in their voice through their own direct connection to source energy. Jayson's work in sound healing is not about singing as such, but about finding a deeper place to connect to our authentic voice through making natural, non-pressured vocal sound that allows source energy to be expressed through the unique sonic fingerprint that is our voice, in line with our birthright as human beings. Welcome, welcome. What have you been up to lately?
Well, all sorts, David. Yeah, so I've been doing, I've been making some recordings. I've got a new recording due out soon that I'm going to be putting on my new website, which is probably going to go up next week. So that's going to be voicealchemy.com. Or voicealchemy.co.uk, sorry, actually, I decided to go with, as I'm in the UK. So, yeah, and I will be, yes, I've been building a new website, and I've got a new recording, a track called Return of the Humans, which is a long-form meditation recording. I've had it stored for a little while. I've been waiting to release it until the website's ready. So, like I say, that will be probably going live in the next week or so. On top of that, I do I'm running some workshops that are coming up and around the country in the UK, and also something else that I do that's an ongoing part of my work is visiting sacred sites and stone circles and running sort of donation-based events at those, where I just bring people together, get them to tune in the way that you've sort of described from my bio, which is sort of just by connecting to source energy through simple intention, that may the sounds that come through us at this time come from the highest place of love, our direct source connection, and for the highest good of earth and all her beings. And then once that intention's set, when we just work with just simple sounds. So the idea is it to be really not pressured. You know, I use humming and vowel sounds and stuff like that. And obviously myself, then within that work, I sort of bring through these kind of sort of healing sound transmissions, if you like. That's how I sort of refer to them nowadays. I just tune in and let the sound come through, and I bring that through for those present through that joint intention. And so the work at the sacred sites is something I really enjoy. I've done Avebury already this year, and I'm doing a stone circle called Stanton Drew, which is in the southwest of England, which is a really good one that I'm looking forward to doing, because I haven't done it for a couple of years. So that's great.
Cool. Okay, excellent. Wow. So I got a big question. If you had all the money in the world, what would you do to help people on the planet?
Well, I mean, I think if you had all the money in the world, it'd be great to get everyone fed, get everyone housed, get everyone clothed, get everyone clean water. All those things would be nice. You know, get the simple things done first, maybe, and then and I think as well, then just start to give people that space so that they can maybe start to explore their inner world a little bit, and start to look at some of those things, start to bring some of the ideas maybe that you might be into, I would imagine, and that I might be into, start to bring those more readily available to the public. So maybe those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay, so I got a question for you to start. So how do you get people to connect to source?
Well, I suppose for me, I think a massive part of my work is about demystifying these ideas, really. I believe everyone, I mean, I almost sort of feel like, how can we not be connected to source? You know, we are all made of source energy. We're all from the same source. You know, I don't view the source, or, you know, obviously people use different words, God or whatever you prefer. You know, I don't see that as a sort of disembodied entity sat in a cloud somewhere, remote from us. You know, I see it as in us. It's part of us. So when I'm talking about connecting to source, I don't think it's sort of some sort of special gift that people are imbued with. I think it happens through intention, and it's quite simple, really. You know, and we have some God-given gifts, or source-given gifts, if you prefer, by which we can access it. So that's through either the breath is an obvious one, our voice is another one, and you know, and obviously there are other ways we can do it. You know, standing with your feet on the earth or what have you. But obviously, you know, my focus primarily is sound, and I particularly find obviously vocal sound very powerful. So that idea of connecting with source, to me, it's done through simple intention, and actually just by having the be willing to put any self-consciousness aside about the idea of the fact that you are one, is we all are directly connected to source energy anyway. So it's just about taking that connection from the subconscious or the unconscious into the conscious, and then making the sound from that place.
How did you get started doing this?
Well, I've got a story to tell there, David, which is so about 30 years ago, I was taken to meet like a psychic lady, like a channel, by my mum, a lady called Anne Hughes in the UK. And when I was chatting with her, or she was talking to me, she said to me, and at the time I used to sing a lot when I was a kid, and then my voice broke. I used to be able to get up high and all of that stuff, and then my voice broke and I stopped singing really for years, and I got really into drumming and percussion. That's when that all happened. And so at this point I was in my early 20s, and I hadn't sung for a long time, really. But yeah, this lady Anne Hughes, she said to me, "You're a crystal singer." And I was like, well, that sounds amazing, but I'm not quite sure what that means. What would you like me to do with that? And she said to me, well, the next time you're in somewhere that feels like a kind of sacred place to you, why don't you just open your mouth and make a sound? She said, and she specifically said, don't worry about singing. She said, just make a sound. And I was like, okay, all right, okay, that's fine. And then about a week later, I was in Glastonbury as it happened, and I was on top of the tour, and then her words popped into my mind, and I thought, okay, yeah, okay, this is a sacred spot, a sacred site. And I literally just went, ah, and I made this sound, and this guy comes walking over to me from the States, named Jonathan Goldman. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Oh, I know Jonathan really well.
Yeah, I thought you would know Jonathan. I figured you would. So Jonathan was literally on top of Glastonbury tour, and he comes over to me and he says, "Oh wow, you're into toning." And I said, "Well, I'm not really into it." I told him what had happened, and then and obviously Jonathan was in the UK. I mean, I think he's been to the UK maybe 3 times in the last 30 years, and he was sort of on top of Glastonbury tour at that exact moment. And then me and him just started making sound there and then. And suddenly we had a gathering. I mean, I did an interview on his Healing Sounds radio show earlier this year, and we sort of reminisced about this meeting again then. And he reminded me that when we started making sound and there was people just sort of gathered around, and we ended up with a sort of big, circle with us and sounding with us, and then people coming up to us afterwards saying they'd had an arm injury that was suddenly not giving them any pain anymore. And so
that's your first time.
That was my first time. That was it. That's how it happened. And then I went down the tour with Jonathan, and he I had a broken finger at the time, and which I couldn't bend. And he, in the pub in Glastonbury, just sang to my finger, with the, gave me the deep voice sound into the finger, and straight away I could bend it. So I saw that power, that healing power of sound straight away in that experience. And then he was running some workshops, which he kindly invited me to attend that week, and I went to them. And then with hearing the sounds and being around them and the breath work and that stuff, I just experienced, which I don't mean in any sort of arrogant or egocentric way, but just like a remembering, just felt like I remembered this stuff, and the sound seemed to come quite easily. And the deep voice sound, for example, was quite funny, really. And the day after I did Jonathan's workshop, I was working in a bookshop at the time, and I bent down to pick my shoes up the day after the workshop, and as I bent down to pick my shoes up, this sound just came out of me. I wasn't even trying to make a sound. So that was the start of it. And then just from doing that, I just found, again, it was like, right from the beginning, I felt the strong desire to connect to these sacred sites, stone circles, make these sounds in these places. And I didn't start out saying, I'm going to start running workshops or events or doing stuff like that. But it sort of seemed to just naturally happen. People started asking me to do it. And here we are now, 30 years later.
I tried to do overtone singing for many years, and occasionally I would be doing voice healing on people, and it would come through perfectly. And then when I was done with the session, I couldn't do it. And then finally, about 7 years ago, Spirit said, "Move your tongue this way," and all of a sudden I could do it. I've tried to do the deep voice, and it's just too much energy. It's like really, I've done it a bit, but it's mostly, I'll show you how to go. This is my little bit. So I'm doing more front of the voice and lips.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's a lovely tone. Sounds lovely. It's lovely energy. Great. Yeah, it's nice.
So do you teach throat singing as well?
Well, yeah. I don't. The things I'm really into, what I'm really into is the stuff that you talked about in the bio. So I'm really into sort
opening your voice, really.
Yeah, I've done lots of singing and performing, and I've done a lot of that stuff. I've been in bands and played drums and been a backing singer, or I've sung as an overtone singer as well in a band called Deep Cabaret, which we've done a bunch of stuff over the years. That's sort of on a bit of a that's on a back burner at the moment, but we sort of released albums and toured that project, and that's where I did more overtone singing and percussion, but in a sort of band setting, sort of desert blues kind of jazz world type stuff. So I've done lots of performing and been a singer in that way. But I think for me, what really inspires me with the healing sound work is almost like, say, taking it out of the realm of singing, really, and sort of and the sort of performative element, sort of kind of removing that, if you like, and sort of making it more about sort of allowing people to overcome the sort of barriers of self-consciousness, that tend to be associated with using the voice in a performative way. So you'll know, if you, I'm sure, been in the world of sound healing for a long time, that if you do any stuff around voice, or people come to a voice workshop or something like that, you'll always get people that go, oh, well, I'm not really a singer, or I'm not confident using my voice, and so for me,
I've got a strict rule around here, and that is, you can never ever do it wrong. It's always perfect.
Exactly.
You can't be out of pitch. It's always perfect. And people normally go, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
many people are scared to death.
Absolutely, I totally agree. So and that's it. So sort of my specialism, such as it is, would be to sort of find really simple, accessible ways, so that anyone can use to sort of establish a voice practice and feel that power, feel how wonderful it is, how transformative it is, and how great it is for sort of obviously self-healing, meditation, and also, sending energy out to others, to other people, other beings, and the earth generally. And it's just a powerful healing modality in that sense, obviously, as you all know. But for me, it's about accessibility. It's about creating that accessibility, and sort of, like I said, being able to put the sort of idea of performance, or exactly what you're saying, getting it wrong, like the idea you can get it wrong, just putting that aside, finding it ways with humor and lightness and just joy, to make it really accessible for anyone.
It's interesting. What I always tell people, as babies, we had it down. If you had anything going on, you let it out with the sound, with zero thought as to whether anybody thought you were doing it right or wrong, right? It's just whack, right? And then around 1 or 2, it's like, shh, shh. And then you get in school and there's no more sound, right? And we lose that God-given ability we had down to actually express ourselves completely.
I totally agree. Absolutely. Well, and I think, and you'll know all that stuff. I mean, it's funny you always say about the baby. You mentioned the baby thing, because the other thing, isn't it, as well, is when you watch babies, breathing, they've got that down as well, haven't they? They breathe from the belly down in the diaphragm. It's all relaxed. There's no tension in the shoulders and all of that stuff. They have all that just naturally there, which somehow can get lost along the way. And of course, as we know, there's all the sort of social element, and like you say, the schooling and that stuff, whereby through conditioning or what have you, that people learn to keep quiet, or speak when spoken to, or maybe they're as a kid learned that if they sing along to the radio or whatever, somebody says, "Oh, be quiet," I don't want to hear that, so just that self-consciousness creeps in, and the idea, like you say, of being able to sort of do it wrong, it comes into consciousness. And so for me, the whole drive is just about taking all that away. So even though I'm really into overtone singing, and I do teach that and do that part as well, I'm less focused on that. I do it. I love to do it, and it's great for people that want to do it and learn that particular set of techniques. But I'm not somebody that thinks that you have to be able to do overtone singing in order to be able to have a healing voice practice.
Cool. So can you give us like a mini version of what you would do to actually help people open up their voice?
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, to help them open up their voice. Well, I think, okay. Well, I think, we can do it together if you like, David, as we're here. That's fine. So, I mean, for me, a very short, quick way, and one of the things I like to do is I use humming and vowel sounds. So, because just they're so accessible, particularly humming, I think, is available to anyone really. So all I would do And all I will do now then is I would start any session by just saying, well, just breathe into your body. If you want to close your eyes, close your eyes. You don't have to if you don't want to, but if it helps you center and be in an inner space for a moment, then just close your eyes and just feel the gentle rhythm of your breath with your shoulders relaxed down into your body. Just allow the rhythm of the breath to just sit with you for a minute or two. And then from that quiet space, I'll just ask you if it aligns with you to join me in setting the intention that the sounds that come through at this time come from the highest place of love, our direct source connection, and for the highest good of Earth and all her beings, including those here present. And then if I was working in this way to help open up our voices, we start with something very, very simple, which would just be a humming. So all I'd do is I'd say we're going to start with 3 hums. We're just going to take a breath in through the nose and let the hum come gently on the out breath at whatever note or pitch is comfortable to you. And if you want to join me, David, so that we can do it together, then feel free to do so. So I'm just going to say take a nice breath in. And then breathing in again. Once more, breathing in. And just take a moment to feel how that sound combined with intention just moves through your system, through your body. And then when you're ready, just take a little wriggle of your fingers and toes. Be present back in your body and open your eyes and be present.
It's amazing how something so simple can be so effective.
Absolutely.
You know what I've been saying for the last year? You need to do that 15 times per day so that that piece becomes the norm through your whole day. Even if you do 15 seconds. I also just love, I've had many people do exercises like this, but just to honor the stillness and really drop into the stillness makes it so much more effective. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree, David. I couldn't agree more. Beautifully put. And I think, yeah, what I love about what we've done there is I think that pretty much anyone can do that. You know, anybody could do that. What we've just done there doesn't require any special talent or technique or skill, or you don't have to be a musician or, you know, any of these things. You just have to be willing, like you say, to make what 2 minutes, 3 minutes of time to just sit and do it. And I'm sure that you'll know, having joined me making those sounds kindly, that you know, you feel the transformation, you feel the shift straight away. Especially, I think for me, which is really important, is by adding that element of intention at the beginning. I remember one of the things that obviously I learned in the very first workshop I did with Jonathan, all those years ago, was he sort of put the idea in my mind of the idea of sound plus intention equals manifestation, and that's always been then a pillar of my work, really, because I've just thought it was a beautiful, simple truth, really, that I think that any of us can apply should we choose to do so.
You know, I think of sound at multiple levels: frequencies, timbres, which is a combination of frequencies, musical intervals, and flow. And what I realized is you could actually do intention at each of those levels. So you could actually do an intention of love for the planet, one frequency. Or you could do love wisdom. Or you could do a energy coming through the crown out the heart, or energy from the earth up the feet out the heart. So you got a flowing intention that you're holding for the intention. So you can do frequencies all the way to flow for intention, just like you can with sound, frequencies all the way to flow, musical flow.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's the wonderful thing, isn't it, about intention, really, is that you can sort of, you know, take it wherever you want to, really. Do you know what I mean? It's the sort of the possibilities are endless. I think for me, what I tend to do is work with those very simple intention that we set at the beginning, because like I say, for me, and it's not that I'm not into any of those things that you've talked about. I've done all sorts over the years, I'm sure you can imagine, and I love all of that stuff, and I love getting into the weeds of it all and exploring and experimenting with various, you know, intentions and sounds and modalities and instruments and what have you, settings. But I think, you know, for me, yeah, the main drive of my work nowadays, and that's how it's ended up going, it sort of naturally synthesized itself to this sort of, well, what's the most simple, what's the most accessible and yet powerful way of working that you could share with anyone, that I almost feel like I could take it anywhere, you know, even for somebody that doesn't know anything at all about sound healing, isn't, you know, maybe, you know, even greatly interested in it or whatever, but I could explain it in a way that would, and show it and demonstrate it, share it, get them to join in, in fact, not just demonstrate it, in such a way that it's like, well, now you know, and you've had that experience, and we've done that in 5 minutes, maybe, like a bit like we just did just then.
Nice. You know, we're working with kids, and it was really funny because I was in the room with the 6 to 12-year-olds, and this one girl, she goes, "Oh, they're good at music and singing, but we're not. None of us are good. There's only 2 that actually are good." And I'm like, "Can you do ooh?" And she goes, "Ooh." And I said, "Can you do ooh?" And she goes, "Ooh." "Can you do ooh, ooh?" And it's like, look, you did it perfectly.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny, actually. I mean, you'd be interested. I mean, I've done lots of work in like special educational settings, what we call SEN in this country. I don't know what you guys would call it in the States. But yeah, special educational schools. And one of the things I got really into was something sort of not exactly the same as what we're talking about up to now, but something called extended voice practice, which is just the idea really of just, again, rather than singing per se, more the idea of just like exploring what you can do with your voice, you know, where you can take it and what you can what sounds you can make really, but not and just sort of allowing it to happen. Because what I was finding, and I worked with a gentleman called Steve Lewis, who was an excellent practitioner of extended voice practice, and he was working with the idea. We were using loop pedals and microphones with children that were non-verbal often, so they didn't have the power of speech, but they could make sound. And so the idea was that you're sort of setting a space whereby you were maybe starting a loop but everything was vocal a lot of the time. I mean, occasionally we'd use guitar, something like that, an acoustic guitar, something like that, maybe to just set a little rhythm or something, but we'd use the vocal and the loop and a loop pedal, and we'd just make sound together and get the kids to join in and join them in their sound world, if you like. So the idea is you're sort of working with them, you're not mimicking them, but you're letting them lead what the sound what the sound environment's going to be like, and you're looping that and creating that so they can hear it back, they can hear their own sounds, they can hear their other peers doing the same, and then as the sort of facilitators of the group, you sort of join in and maybe support that and possibly guide it on occasion. But working in that setting and with the loop pedals and the microphones and these children, and watching the effect it had on them, and watching them like really have these incredible experiences of being able to hear themselves back, and being able to join, because again, often a lot of these children, they were sort of in their own world to some degree. There's an element of sort of isolation that they may experience for some of them, and you could see it's a real moment of connection, sat in a group setting with other children with perhaps similar challenges, and a couple of facilitators, and just being able to sort of explore this stuff, and again, sort of, it's a way, it is music. It's amazing things happen, but again, it's more like almost like experiential sound, which provides a kind of healing, a kind of connection. Do you know what I mean? That perhaps otherwise they might not have access to generally.
I think it should be required, especially for kids with learning disabilities. It's just so effective, especially with the nonverbal. It's just the best, so they can learn to express their emotions with no words.
Absolutely.
So we're working with a dementia company, and we had to do a lot of call and response to get them comfortable making sound again, right? And I had this one guy, he was like this, and I said, and we had already done a good amount of work of the sound of how you're feeling. And he's like, I said, can you do the sound of how you're feeling? And he looks up and goes, ah, and he looks up at me and smiles and goes back down. Total connection, right?
Yeah.
And it woke him up. Right?
Yeah.
And he expressed himself. I love that. Okay, so you want to do some sound and precious intention for us?
Yeah, I can do some of that. That's fine. So, yeah, let's do that. So you okay? So if it's all right with you, David, what I might do is more just bring some sound through, bring what I do through. So what I will do is I set the intention the same way as we referred to before, and I'll just take a few breaths, and I let kind of source guide me as to what comes through really at that time. So we're just going to get into a quiet space. Just take a nice deep breath in. Release it on the out breath. Another nice deep breath in through your nose. And release on the out breath. Just going to set the simple intention that may the sounds that come through at this time come from our direct source connection, our joint permission, and for the highest good of all. Just sit and relax and let the sounds that come through go where they're most needed.
So when you're ready, just take a nice, deep, soft breath in through your nose and then just release it through your mouth. And again, breathing in and out through your mouth. and out through your mouth. And just let that energy that came through just gently wash over and through your systems, your body, your heart, your mind, your soul. Just breathe normally and gently for a moment. And when you're ready, just think about the edges of your body. Be aware of them and wriggle your fingers and toes. Smile if you like, and then just come back and be present in the room.
So, why do you think this gets people so high?
Great question. I've been asked that one before. That's brilliant.
I've got some ideas.
Yeah, well, I think there's lots of things. I think there's lots of layers to it, aren't there? So, I mean, you'll know, things like, simple stuff like, any sort of drone-like sounds within the human voice range, like immediately within about 30 seconds, put your brain into alpha brainwave pattern. So that would be one, quite basic, accessible element of like making sound in that way that I think, you can measure and it is provable, perhaps, if you like, for people that need that kind of stuff. But then I think there's a lot more to it than that, I mean, I personally think that making sound in this way is like a birthright. It's something we've done for thousands of years, maybe even longer. And we've done it, as a practice as individuals, but I think as well, and a big part of, why I like to work with the stone circles in the UK and the sacred sites is I think that people have gathered in those places for thousands of years. They've come together as community. They've come together in intention and joined in sound and intention to give thanks, to give healing, to, come together in ceremony, honour the bounties of the earth or their connection to the universe or their connection to each other. And they've done so in sound.
It's like it's in our DNA.
Exactly, David.
Spiritually.
So, yeah, absolutely. And so spiritually and also like practically, it's like you say, I think it's both things. And I think, again, that's something that really excites me. I really get excited about, I love all of the really kind of cosmic out there side of things, and I love that connection, that sort of ethereal beauty that's in the sounds that people like yourself or or maybe hopefully that I work with. I love all that, but I also love like it being really simple and real, and like here it is, it's a real physical thing that you're experiencing, I'm experiencing, and it's undeniable when you connect into it. So yes, I think absolutely spiritually, but I just think it's real, and grounded as well, which is another part that I really love.
It's interesting. The harmonic series are mathematical multiples, 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times. So every one of those frequencies is a multiple of the actual fundamental. And that pattern is in the distance between the planets. It's in the distance of electron shells around the nucleus of an atom. It's also in the weight of the vertebrae in the back. And I would bet it's in the auras and the chakras, 1 times 2 times 3 times. So it's like you're tapping into a deeper level of nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's exactly it. And I think that's just wonderful point of reference there, David, isn't it? Because I think, yeah, exactly. Once you start getting into the ideas of the harmonics and the mathematics of it and the things you're connecting to, and also things like, you'll know again about all this stuff like this sort of, the electromagnetic field around the body or around your heart. And, also I'm really interested in,
I think there's some higher beings also that get a little excited and show up.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like you're surrounded by angels all of a sudden. They're like, okay, let's go play there.
Absolutely. And I think, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I've had I'm sure you can imagine some very interesting experiences over the years, doing this stuff, and particularly at the Stone Circles, actually. And it's very, so in Avebury in the UK, you've got, which is an event I've done regularly actually over the years, and I've sort of always kept in touch with that particular site. It's one I feel a deep sort of resonance with myself. But you've got two quite famous ley lines in this country called the St Michael and the St Mary ley line that run sort of across the country broadly, kind of east to west, and they sort of run through a couple of stones. There's a pair of stones called the Goddess. Well, there's a stone called the Goddess Chair. Some people call it the Devil's Chair. I think that was like an old Christianized name for it. And then there's two stones there, and the Michael and Mary line run right through there. And then on the other side of the circle, there's a pair of stones called the Cove, and they run through there to the Michael and Mary ley line. And I always go to both of those spots with my groups every year when I go there, and I make sound in those places. And I've had really interesting experiences with dowsers, like measuring the ley lines and watching them get really big when the groups are making the sound, and then sort of shrink afterwards, or the energy around the stones, like the auras of the stones, which to me the stones themselves almost seem like kind of beings, the auras around the stones get much bigger when the people are making the sounds, and then shrink down again a little bit, after they finish making sounds. So you witness all these kind of, amazing interactions in the space between the people and the site and the stones, and then actually even nature. I mean, I've even had experiences, and I've had this at Avebury. I remember actually running a circle at the Cove there, and I remember we got involved in a group toning. It was a beautiful, sunny, clear, blue sky day in the middle of summer, and we had one crack. We finished our tone all together, and we had one crack of simultaneous thunder and lightning, crack, like that, bang, and just one. And it was a beautiful sunny day, not a cloud in the sky. So,
wow.
So I've had those kind of experiences as well at Avebury. And again, I think it's not. I think it's a really interesting, to play with the idea of sound plus intention plus group energy, which I think gives you something that's more than the sum of its parts, plus the power of the site as well, the space, and thousands of years of of energy being shared in those spaces, as well as the fact that they were likely, in my personal opinion, built in those places for a reason in the first instance. So I think. Yeah, so you can get these really potent combinations of energy, but they're accessed beautifully simply just through what we've just talked about: breath, sound, intention.
So you do this for healing on people too. You've had experiences where people have had really major transformations.
Yeah, I've done all sorts over the years. Again in the sacred site settings, but also just one-to-one sessions and group sessions. It's been really fascinating. A lot of the stuff that's happened for me. It was actually one of the very first things I did. Actually, again, it's all part of this initial journey. So very soon after I met Jonathan, when the story I told at the beginning, I remember a while later, not that long, it was within a couple of months, I was starting to play with these sounds and use them all the time, because I'd sort of got bitten by the bug of that kind of way of making sound. And I was traveling down to Cornwall, which again, if you go down the Cornwall, I don't know if you know the southwest of England at all, but there's a lot of stone circles down there, and it's quite wild and quite remote, quite a lot of Cornwall as you go down to that southwest sort of point of England. and I was sort of travelling down there, going to these stone circles and what have you. And to be honest, I was a young man at the time, so I was kind of hitchhiking my way down in those days. And then and I ended up one day I got stuck hitchhiking. I couldn't get a lift, and I just ended up, through a friend, meeting somebody else who said, "Oh yeah, I know somebody who lives near there," and I ended up going to and they said I could stay at their house for the night very kindly. And I went to their house, and it was funny because this guy was a complete skeptic. He was totally like, not into any of the kinds of things that perhaps you or I would be into, and he had just had a surgery on his knee, and he was like, I can't use my knee at all. I can't bend it. He was like struggling to walk, walking with a totally straight leg, but a really sweet guy and really nice, very kind, generous. Like I say, put me up and let me stay in his home for the evening. And so he'd had this surgery, and I was just thinking, well, I sort of, I owe this guy something. He's done me a real favour. And so I said to him, look, I do this thing, I make these sounds, and they're kind of healing sounds. So if you want, I could sing to your knee for a bit. And he was like, well, mate, if it makes you feel better, he said, I'll let you do it. So I did, so I sat there, and he was, got himself comfortable on his sofa, and I sang to his knee for a while, and he was laughing throughout. I mean, to be fair, we were both laughing. It was the kind of sort of strange absurdity of it in a way. Anyway, so I sang to his knee for about 20 minutes. And anyway, he sort of didn't really say much afterwards. He was sort of giggling away while we were doing it. But I was sort of thinking, well, that's good. It's like bring a bit of lightness, a bit of joy. It's all good. And he took himself off to bed anyway. And then it was funny because in the morning, the next day, I ended up speaking to him on the phone later the next day. I left in the morning. And I spoke to him on the phone, and he said to me, he said, I don't know what's gone on. He said, I've got up this morning. He said that knee, he said, since I had the operation, I think it was a week or 2 weeks before. It's a long time ago now. I'm trying to remember the exact details. But he said, I've got this morning. There's absolutely no pain in that knee, none at all. He said, I've even started to be able to bend it a little bit. He said, and yeah, no pain at all. He said, what's going on there? How does that work? And at the time, to be honest, I was a bit like, well, I don't really know that much about it. I'm just doing it and sharing it, and I've sort of learned a bit, and that's what I'm doing. And I've sort of just given that gift joyfully and freely, really. And so, yeah, so he'd straight away. And I think I spoke to him again a couple of weeks later, and he'd said he'd had no pain at all in the knee, for about 2 weeks afterwards. So after this surgery. So yeah, that was the first experience. And there's been a fair few afterwards as well.
Thanks. Okay, anything else you'd like to share before you end?
I think again, if anyone is interested in my work, I know I did mention it at the beginning, but if you'll excuse the shameless plug, my website voicealchemy.co.uk is probably going to go live next week. And that's going to have downloads on there and events, and I'm going to be running a membership subscription service as well, so whereby people can get monthly personalized sound healing recordings sent to them, we're sort of taking into account things like the current astrology, and maybe a little nod to what's going on in the world, plus also maybe being able to pull in what their personal intentions are and what they would like help for. So I'm going to be running a subscription service off that.
I will be running a voice alchemy workshop. In this workshop, I will share simple techniques of breath and voice that allow you to have an accessible, practical experience of developing your own voice in a sacred sound context. So for that course, what you will get is a Zoom link for a 2-hour course that you then can have access to the recording of. If you will also get if you email me, you will get access to half an hour meditation recording, my latest release called Return of the Humans, and you'll also get some course materials that explain the vowel sounding and how we go about these exercises.
I'm looking forward to sharing more.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your work, and the sounds were so incredible.
Thank you, David, for inviting me to participate in your event. I really appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed having a chance to talk with you. So yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.